In its luridness, you saw the whole story of America. The violence and terror that white people visited upon blacks, the dignity with which black people responded. How this photo could have been taken in the Jim Crow South in 1913 and nothing about it would be different. How this photo in 2013 marked lasting progress because Sonia and I personified King's famous dream. And yet, dreams are not fairy tales, and talking about this photo and then comparing it to the other images that filled our screens of Trayvon Martin's murder, of Chicago cops killing Laquan McDonald, led my mother-in-law Connie one night to turn from the television and, with memories of a childhood in that Jim Crow South, to say to Sonia and me, same old shit. There was something damning and hopeful, and because of that contradiction, something eternal about the Gadsden photo. For years, I studied it. Then, in 2020, another image preoccupied me and the rest of America. Officer Derek Chauvin suffocating George Floyd. For Sonia and Connie and me, the murder felt personal. George had grown up in Houston in 3rd Ward. Sonia had spent her weekday afternoons at her grandma's in the adjacent and equally hard-up 5th Ward. George was Sonia's age, 46, and he'd gone to Yates High. Sonia's cousins had gone to Yates. Her cousin Derek knew George back then, watched him as a tight end on the Yates football team that made the state championship game. In part because of the overlap between Sonia's history and George's, we didn't shield our kids from the coverage of his death like we had the others. All the unarmed black men whom police had killed and whose murders had also been recorded by security footage or cell phones. No, with George Floyd, we sat on the couch and watched him die on CNN. That could have been Derek, Sonia said, as we saw Officer Chauvin absent-mindedly, almost playfully, grind his knee into the back of George's neck. We looked at each other and couldn't say what we both thought. That could be one of our boys. The twins were 9 by then and Harper 10, old enough to see the outline of the story that lay just beyond the images on TV, the truth that would define their lives. This was the black experience as well. We allowed them to watch George die, and the boys in particular had questions about it. Why do those cops do that? And when Sonia and I explained, they asked, are all cops racist? And when we explained that, how many people are like those bad cops? Every answer only led to harder questions. Will people not like me? And the hardest one, am I inferior? We could see it, the perceptions the boys were forming, the steps leading down to self-hatred. We tried to stave it off. We love you boys, and you can do whatever, go wherever you want in this life. We'll just have to be careful, Walker asked. I hesitated, and Sonia did too, because George had been careful. Unarmed, handcuffed, he'd begged Officer Chauvin to listen to him. Breonna Taylor had been careful. She was asleep in her bedroom behind a locked door when Louisville cops barged in and shot her 8 times for a crime she did not commit. Ahmaud Arbery had been careful. He'd gone for a run in a coastal Georgia town, and 3 white men in a pickup truck killed him where he ran. No amount of vigilance has ever kept children like ours safe. In our hesitation responding to Walker's question, the boys' faces hardened. It was another reason George Floyd's murder felt personal. The twins lost their innocence that day. They eventually lost more than that. 2 months later, Jacob Blake walked away from cops in Kenosha, Wisconsin, and those cops shot him 7 times in the back while Blake's 3 children screamed from his car. Our kids saw that footage too. Why do they keep trying to kill us? Walker yelled, running from the room in tears with Marshall following him. It was a tough time, the latter half of 2020. The fear our kids felt hardened eventually into a cynicism which wizened and calloused them to a certain extent, even protected them, but also enclosed them in a prison of their own rage. We saw it. We heard it. How everything about their country was awful and bloody, and how they would move away from here just as soon as they could. The footage on the news they saw, the images they studied, portrayed a pessimism about America that approached hopelessness. I thought of the